Yesterday, I talked about how Nebraska's performance against Indiana was embarrassing, not just because it was a blowout loss, but also because of how bad they looked coming off of the bye week. And Michigan, what did they do over the bye week exactly? I don't know, but I know that this past Saturday, they lost to Illinois 21-7. Illinois was the better coach team. They were the more talented team. They were the team that put forth the most effort. They were not actually the team that played the closest to their ceiling, I don't believe. Illinois didn't even pass for 100 yards on the day, and it's not like their defense put on a jaw-dropping performance. It was good, but against a Michigan offense that is one of the worst in all of the country. Illinois humiliated Michigan in the 21-7 victory, the sixth victory for Illinois on the season. They moved up to 20th in the AP poll, remained at 21st in the coaches poll. Michigan finally dropped from the polls, and no one is giving them votes. I don't know why it took people so long to realize that Michigan's just not a good team. They're not well coached. They're not disciplined. They have a ton of talent, and if just a few more portal moves were made and different hires were made, I bet you this could be a top 10 or even top 5 team with how weak this year is in football. But that's hypotheticals. That's what ifs. In the here and now, Michigan is not a good team. They're still overrated in power ratings due to how elite their teams of the previous 2-3 seasons were. And this is not that type of team. The coaching staff's totally different. The players, for the most part, are very different, especially the starters. And I would say the culture is different. The effort is different. The fight is different. For Illinois, it's much of the same. This is a Brett Bielema team. They are not going to blow out their opponents, but they will pull a sneaky on you, as Bob Ross likes to say. That's what they will do. They are, well, very calm. They are cool. They are collected. And they get things done. And they're intense when they have to be. And they fight and they work hard. And they will give you hell. They will. Illinois gave Michigan hell in this game. Michigan outgained them in yards, 322-267. But they were -3 in the turnover battle. Michigan had several trips to the red zone that came up with no points. Michigan had 20 first downs to Illinois' 18. Someone who I talked to on the phone, and I respect this person a lot. This person has helped me out with graphic design even. And sorry to say to this person if they are listening. Actually, I can just say his name. To John, who's helped me out, I'm sorry that I didn't say this to you on the phone when we were talking. But he was saying how part of the reason why Michigan's defense has performed poorly is because they're on the field all the time. Against Texas, I think that was part of the case. Against USC, that was certainly the case in the second half. There's a lot of truth in what he's saying. So actually, take it back. This is not an apology because I'm not insulting what you were saying. But to add on to what he was saying, that was not the case in this game. Michigan actually controlled the clock. They had 33 minutes and 34 seconds of possession to Illinois' 26 minutes and 26 seconds. The defense just has holes. They are not well coached, even when they're well rested, and even when the offense is moving down the field or they get a touchdown drive to make it a single score game before halftime, give the team some juice. The defense ultimately still falters. The team is not clutch. They are not together. This is not a good team for Michigan. Illinois, in comparison, Michigan would benefit a lot by having Illinois' coaches. They would. If they had Barry Looney Jr., if they had Aaron Henry, if they had Brett Bielema, and many of the assistant coaches for Illinois, and then maybe you bring over Illinois' wide receivers and their quarterback, but keep everything else Michigan, Michigan would be an awesome team. Probably not the best in the Big Ten, but they'd be fun to watch, and they'd actually be in conversation with competing in their games against Oregon and Ohio State. But I digress. I want to break this game down, get into some takeaways that I have, but before I do that, please hit the subscribe button. Please like the video. Share this video around and this channel around to other college football fans. Join our Discord server via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when we release more college football content. And of course, comment your reaction down below. And also, if you want to support the channel monetarily, check out the Patreon page or merchandise store and make your purchases that you want to on there via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. But the things that you can do for free, watching the video all the way through, liking, sharing, subbing, hitting the bell, commenting, and joining the Discord server, all of those things are free, and those things help out the channel the most, especially liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell. We are close to 20,000 subs, and we will be doing a giveaway when we hit 20,000 subs that you won't want to miss. But to continue with our analysis of this game, Michigan held Illinois to under 5 yards per play and under a third of a point per, they held them to under a third of a point per play margin. So Illinois didn't dominate Michigan. They didn't run all over Michigan. Toward the end of the game they did, but the game was basically already in Illinois' hands when they really began to rack up rushing yards when I caught the game at the end. By the way, I actually turned the game off at one point. This is the first Michigan game that I have not watched all the way through. Of course, I watched most of it. I only stopped watching it after it was in doubt. Stopped paying attention to it. It was still on the TV screen. But this is the first Michigan game that I have not watched every snap, including garbage time, whether a win or a loss, since probably the 2020 season, when I was often working on Saturdays, and that was also a terrible year. That is how bad this Michigan team is. They are not fun to watch. They are less entertaining to watch than 2023 Iowa, because at least 2023 Iowa actually had a defense, and they could win close games, and because the games were close but winnable, and they were elite on one side of the football, they could be exciting. Michigan is not elite at any side of the ball. They're not elite on special teams, as this Illinois game showed. They're pretty good, but they're not elite there. They're certainly not elite on defense. We knew that several weeks ago, and we knew entering this year they were not going to be elite on offense. Anyone who thought this offense would be elite, I'm sorry. I was very bullish on this Michigan team in the preseason, as many of you know. I didn't even have them with a top 10 offense. Didn't have it because I didn't have Alex Orji as a top 25 quarterback. I didn't have Michigan even close to having a top third receiver core in the Big Ten or a top 25 receiver core nationally. Wasn't going to do it. And I think I was rightfully high on the running back room, although more so because of Khalil Mullings than Edwards, and rightfully somewhat high at tight end and the O-line, but quarterback and wide receiver have been even worse than I thought they were going to be. And play calling's been atrocious. And the defense isn't elite, so they can't give the offense the amount of possessions they need to get going, and the offense wouldn't get going anyway because it's not good. It's awful. Michigan only averaged 4.3 yards per play. They had a negative 0.275 points per play margin. That means that Illinois, in this football game, for every one play they had compared to every one play that Michigan had, Illinois scored 0.275 more points. And that's because they finished in the red zone, didn't have any turnovers. Michigan, well, they gained more yards. They controlled the clock, but they couldn't finish. That's the mark of a bad team. This game was very winnable. Michigan could have won this game. They should have won this game. Many people, in fact, all the sharps, based off of the fact that Michigan opened up as like, what, a 1.5 favorite, and the line closed at 5.5 points before the game. People were high on Michigan. They thought that Michigan would win this game. I think Joel Klatt picked Michigan to win. A friend of mine, who I trust, picked Michigan to win. Many Michigan fans thought that the Wolverines would win. Many analysts thought that Michigan would win. Many sharps who bet for income, for an additional source of income, thought Michigan would win. I saw straight through this from the start of the week because I always shoot you guys straight. And even though I'm a Michigan fan, after that Texas game, I thought to myself, yeah, this team's not near elite. They're not elite. They're just not. Unless in some atmosphere, in some universe, Texas was going to be as good as 2020 Alabama. And evidently they're not. See what Georgia did to them in their own home stadium. But after that Washington game in particular, I knew this was a bad football team. In Illinois, everyone talks about how they win close games and it's just not sustainable. It's not November yet. November is when Illinois fell apart in 2022, and they have a better quarterback than they did this year. Altmaier knows how to carry this team. He did it against Purdue, and he kind of did it in this game. If Altmaier was just a statue and had no legs, Michigan may have won this game like 10-7. Altmaier's legs were such an important part of this football game. They really were. And it helped contribute to the fact that Illinois had no turnovers, because when Altmaier was in a passing situation and when Michigan was bringing pressure or his receivers were covered, well, he could scamper out. He could scramble out. And he could live to play another down type of deal. Illinois also only had 6 penalties for 50 yards. Michigan had 6 penalties for 61 yards. So Michigan didn't win the penalty battle for another game. And they also lost the turnover battle. And you look at the Wolverines and what happened here. They were 5 of 14 on third down. Not terrible. They were 3 of 4 on fourth down. That's actually pretty good. And they had 20 first downs. The problem is they had 2 fumbles. They had 1 interception. One of the fumbles was right in Michigan territory, and it led to a field goal. And Illinois, look at what Illinois' touchdown drives were in length. 51 yards, 55 yards. Their field goal drives were 46 yards and 24 yards. Michigan's touchdown drive was 72 yards, 12 plays, 6 minutes of clock. Michigan totally lost the field position battle. An underrated part of this game was the fact that Tommy Doman only averaged 32.7 yards per punt. He's been awful. And special teams in this game overall were awful, from the bad snap and hold, which led to Zvada horrifically missing his kick, to the Tommy Doman shanked punts, the lack of a punt return or a kick return game, etc. It was just not a good game from Michigan. Not a good game from Illinois either, by the way. But because they're well coached and they're a much more balanced and diverse roster in terms of skill set, they were able to, actually move the ball and finish drives and, do things that are required to win a football game. Michigan football is about to implode. That's really the first takeaway that I want to make. I'm going to release tomorrow, probably, a preview and prediction video for Michigan State. And I will be predicting something that I didn't think I would be predicting in a million years for this season. I am going to probably be predicting a Michigan State victory over Michigan. In an objective sense. MSU is underrated by power ratings because power ratings this early in the season still rely in part, and always will throughout the season, but the more games you play, the more priors go away. MSU's power rating is still relying on the priors from especially 2023, but also 2022, 2021, and maybe even a bit of 2020. 3 of those 4 teams sucked. They sucked and they stunk like dog water. One of them, 2021 MSU, was never high in power ratings because they won a bunch of close games and their quarterback play wasn't elite. It was their running back play that carried them that year with the elite, awesome, and to be admired Kenneth Walker. So they're underrated consequentially. Also because they had a bad game against Boston College and they got blown out by Ohio State and Oregon. But may I mind you, they had plays in those games where if they just finished like they did against Iowa, they maybe could have competed with those teams. They're a very well-coached team. Michigan is overrated because outside of the 2020 season, in the past 4 years, again outside of 2020, so let's just say past 3 years, from 2021 to 2023, they were the second best program in all of college football. So priors are going to be very bullish on Michigan given their past success. And priors are factored into FPI, S&P+, every power rating. K-Ford, F, I think it's F plus, F plus, and also FE, and all these other power ratings. They'll probably have to change them because with the portal and NIL and all that different stuff, it's going to be less common to return the amount of production that teams in the past did. You're going to be seeing fewer and fewer actual returning production. The numbers will overall be the same because returning production factors in incoming transfer production, but actual returning production from your school is going to be much lower than it was at your school like 5 or 10 years ago, for example. Anyway, the point that I was trying to make is Michigan could miss a bowl game, and I'll get to that here in a few minutes, but the team quit in the fourth quarter. They quit. They didn't look like they understood what was going on, or that they looked like they were exhausted. Maybe quit isn't the best word. I don't exactly know because part of me checked out, and I don't, I'm not in the players' heads. I'm not. I can't read their minds. And in fact, it's sometimes hard to read their body language because, well, we're all different individuals. We kind of have our own unique body language. All of us do. So I'm saying quit, not in the sense that they're losers, but in the sense that they just got broke, whether they quit intentionally or they did because, like, how you quit when you're trying to set a record on your treadmill or a PR on the deadlift. You quit because you're exhausted. I don't know which it was, but the team got broke. Illinois pulled a Bane on Michigan, and the staff's inept. So what does Michigan do moving forward? I guess is my question. I mean, we're talking about a quarterback change. We're 7 games in the season. Like, what? It's something you're supposed to figure out entering the year. It's late October. It's late October. And all of you, everyone in the universe, is almost 2 months older than when the season started, and Michigan still doesn't know who their quarterback is. That's insane. It's absolutely crazy. And there were some players on offense who I think stepped up. Michigan had an okay offensive performance. I thought that, in terms of yards and some of the things I saw in the pass, it was Michigan's best performance in the passing game in terms of ceiling that I've seen all season long. But then, Jack Tuttle is just throwing it to Illinois defensive backs and linebackers. It's like, what's Michigan doing? What's this staff doing? This is one of the worst coaching staffs that I have ever witnessed with my own eyes. And you can just tell based off of how the team is executing. And people will say, "Oh, well, it's because it's because of all the loss at production." Or some people will say, "Oh, Michigan no longer knows the signs of their opponents." It's all that stuff is self-soothing propaganda for the Michigan fans talking about how it's only because we lost players, be easy on the staff, or for some fans of other programs, or maybe very psychotic Michigan fans saying that, it's all sign stealing. The truth is neither of those things. The truth is that in actual relationship to both of those topics, because Harbaugh wanted to go to the NFL, because Michigan cheated and Harbaugh knew that Michigan was going to be punished in some way, more specifically him, and he didn't want to deal with that, and also that Michigan was probably, losing a lot. And Harbaugh, in hindsight, seemed to be more recruiting to win a national championship and then leave than to build a dynasty here. All three of those things factored into, Harbaugh leaving. And just the coaching staff following him. So then you have this massive coaching change on top of the massive roster change. And that results in what you are seeing right now. Michigan had in this game 322 total yards, and they only earned 7 points off of it. They allowed 187 rushing yards from their opponent and almost 5 yards per carry. You factor out sacks, it was 5 yards per carry. And they allowed 5 sacks from Illinois and 7 tackles for loss. I mean, this is a team that you look at the game statistically, you look at the drive chart. You don't even have to watch the game like I did to know that this team's about to implode based off of preseason expectations, based off of the output, the production. This is not a good football team. It's not. And I mean, I don't care what your feelings are about Michigan and how much, all the stuff that happened with Connor Stallions actually helped Michigan football. I think that even CJ Stroud and Cade Stover, who are both angry about that whole incident, as they should be, would tell you that this Michigan team is pathetic in comparison to the Michigan teams they played against. I mean, this is just not good. It's not. This is a bad football team. And I've said that over and over again, and I will continue to say it because it's facts. Michigan this year is not righting the ship. The season is basically over outside of dignity purposes, and that will require a strong culture, that will require good players, that will require sacrifices, and I don't know if the team has it in them or if they should even have it in them for them to continue to put up their A-plus effort or to try to improve. I don't know where Michigan football is. If you think you do, well, comment your thoughts down below. That's what the comment section is for. But I'm about to be done talking about Michigan after this point, and this point's going to be pretty quick. The Wolverines will struggle to go bowling. The remaining schedule is Michigan State at home, Oregon at home. They play at Indiana. Then they got a bye. Then they host Northwestern, and then they travel to Ohio State. The Oregon game is definitely going to be a blowout. I will tell you that right now. It is going to look exactly like Oregon-Utah did last season. That's what that game will look like. The final score will be like 35-6, and Oregon will absolutely dominate. That's what that game is going to be like. Exactly like the Oregon-Utah game from last year. It scores 35-6. Oregon depanted Utah in their own home stadium, and it was embarrassing. It was a very humbling loss for Utah to accept. The MSU and OSU games are rivalries, so even though I think Ohio State should blow out Michigan, there's always a chance Michigan plays them competitively, but I don't think that'll happen. Michigan State is a losable game. I think Indiana on the road, after what Oregon will likely do to Michigan, Indiana will probably plaster Michigan like they did Nebraska this past Saturday. I mean, look at all these opponents. Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State are better than Michigan, objectively. They're all way better than Michigan. That's 3 L's. That's 6-6. Northwestern and Michigan State have better coaching staffs than Michigan does, and they catch them before big games, so they're both in trap spots. And Northwestern and Michigan, I don't know if Michigan views Northwestern as much as a rival, but Northwestern probably will view Michigan as one. And Michigan State is a big rival of Michigan's. That's going to be a very heated game where Michigan State's going to want revenge. Michigan could go 4-8. They could go 5-7. 6-6 at this point, it will be a challenge to get to 6-6. That is how, not just how tough Michigan's schedule is, but also how bad of a team they are. Northwestern, in my mind, is the only likely win. It's the only game where Michigan should be favored is against the Northwestern Wildcats. The same team that lost to Duke, who struggled against Miami of Ohio, who, well, beat Maryland in dominant fashion, but then again, Maryland's not any good, and Maryland probably should be favored over Michigan right now, as crazy as that may sound, especially if I told you that in the preseason. And Northwestern is the same team that Wisconsin held to 3. I mean, Michigan's defense won't hold Northwestern to 3 points. They won't, because this defense always has holes. And it's the Wink Martindale experience. It's Mr. Trucker Cap experience is what it is. And as you can all probably tell, I'm sick and tired of it. I'm absolutely sick and tired of it. And yeah, this is Michigan football for this year. Not saying it's the way long term or that it's what Michigan's program is. Michigan, even when they've had down spirals like 2017 or 2019, or the meltdown at the end of 2018, or Michigan's 2012 season where they started top 10 and finished 8-5, or the 2010 Michigan Wolverines under Rich Rod, who had an awesome offense but no defense, or some of the bad Lloyd Carr eras. All or most of the teams I just listed would beat this team. That's how bad this Michigan team is. And where does Sharon Moore go from here? I don't know. There's a big chance he gets fired at the end of the year. And there's a chance that some who said that this was a continuity hire so that Michigan could see what the NCAA would, bring forth, there's a chance that's correct. I mean, I don't think Michigan's going to receive a heavy punishment because, well, that just, it's unrealistic. Objectively speaking, it's unrealistic. It probably won't happen. However, any type of punishment is going to be unattractive to any big-time head coach. So maybe the people who were saying that, small in number to begin with, now growing, had some truth, and I will give credit where it's due right there. As for Illinois, and then we'll end this video, they're well coached. They're now 3-1 in top 25 matchups this season. 3-1. We saved the best for last year. That's why I started out with Michigan. Obviously, as many of you know, I am a Michigan fan, but we saved the best for last year. I like to talk about the winners at the end of the video because we all deserve a positive send-off at the end. It's good for us, and it's good for you. I mean, I already mentioned you and us, but ignore that. They're a well-coached team. 3-1 against top 25 teams this year. Right now, their one loss is to a Penn State team who I think is top 10. Illinois' wins ranked were against Kansas, who's no longer ranked, Nebraska, who's no longer ranked, and Michigan, who's no longer ranked. However, this is a down year in football. I'm not going to punish Illinois for having close wins against teams who, well, aren't all that good. I mean, Kansas isn't that good. Nebraska isn't. We know that Purdue, Central Michigan, and Eastern Illinois aren't, and Michigan isn't. But they put up somewhat of a fight against Penn State, and they beat Michigan by 14, and they got to 6 wins. I think they've already hit the over on their preseason win total, and this is a team that they can beat Minnesota, they can beat Michigan State, they can beat Rutgers and Northwestern. They have a tough game at number 1 Oregon, which I'm very excited to watch this coming Saturday. They're obviously a big-time underdog there, but they'll probably be favored in the 4 games following the Oregon matchup. They could go 10-2. If they somehow upset Oregon, 11-1 is in play. But as I've already said, they're a big, massive underdog to Oregon. So we'll see how all of that works. And they're traveling to Oregon, so the whole, time change thing and how teams, when traveling multiple time zones, don't do well, that's not in their favor either. And I'll be previewing that matchup and giving a prediction for it in the following 24, 48 hours. So please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when that video releases. But anyway, they're a well-coached team. That's why they're in play to go 10-2, 9-3. That's why they're 6-1 right now and have already hit the over on their preseason win total. That's why they win a bunch of close games. In this game alone, they were +3 in the turnover margin, +73 in rushing yards differential, +4 in sacks differential, and +13.6 yards per punt differential. All of those things, and probably some other things too, are like the fact they won the penalty battle in yards, not in total penalties. And also the fact that, honestly, they won despite losing the TOP battle. All those things and probably more are indicative of the fact that they were the better coach team by a lot, especially when you factor in that Michigan has Will Johnson, who was injured for part of the game, I know, but still started, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Colston Loveland, 4 first-rounders, 4 of them. You also have Rayshawn Benny, who I think could in the future be like a first-round defensive tackle. Oh, also, don't forget about Josiah Stewart. Don't forget about Derek Moore or about Ernest Hausman or some of the secondary players who are poorly coached, but if they were better coached, would totally be NFL prospects. I mean, Michigan has more NFL talent on their roster than Illinois does, but Illinois is better coached, and they scheme better. They put their players in a better position to win, and they're a more balanced roster. Michigan has nobodies at wide receiver, or they're just that poorly coached and schemed and have such awful QB play, which I think is even more so the case, that the receivers can't be showcased. And they absolutely, I'm actually going to retract the statement, they don't have nobodies at wide receiver, they have nobodies at quarterback, and they have poor development at wide receiver. I think that is a better phrasing of what's going on. Illinois has Luke Altmaier at quarterback, a gamer. They have Zachary Franklin at wide receiver. At wide receiver as well, they got Pat Bryant. They have Hank Beatty. They have Tanner Arkin, a good tight end. Michigan's leading receivers in this game were Colston Loveland with 83 receiving yards and Hogan Hansen, a backup tight end, with 50. The disparity between these two teams in terms of Michigan being an extremist team in the sense that they're very good in some places but horrific in others, versus Illinois, who's just kind of above average or mediocre at everything, couldn't be clearer. And really, when you have the battle between the master of none and the master of one, it's better to be the master of none. And on top of that, you have the better coaching staff. That's what translates to Illinois winning by double digits, despite being nearly a touchdown underdog when the sports books closed when the game kicked off. They're a very well-coached team, and I wish them the best of luck. And last point I want to make, I think that Brett Bielema will be at Illinois for a while. They're guaranteed to go bowling now, even if they somehow lose out, which would be very disappointing. They're 6-6. I don't think they'll lose out because, as I'm going to talk about this week, Rutgers looks to be in danger. Northwestern is not good. They're well coached, but not better coached than Illinois, and they're not good. Minnesota has questions. Michigan State has questions. This team's floor maybe 6-6, probably more likely 7-5. The ceiling is 10-2, 7-5, 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, 9-3, 8-4, 10-2 is all of those. I think are more likely than 7-5. 8 wins or more is successful for Illinois, and a lot of these players have eligibility. Let's quickly look at their depth chart before we get on out of here. Illinois is, well, they have like juniors everywhere on defense and on offense. Luke Altmaier, junior. Aiden Lawry, sophomore. Same with Caden Fagan. Tanner Arkin, junior. Melvin Priestley, junior. Josh Kurtz and Josh Geske, juniors. Colin Dixon, redshirt freshman. Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin are seniors, but Hank Beatty, Ashton Hollins, and Alexander Kapka-Jones, they have eligibility left. Those are wide receivers in the two deep. On defense, Alex Bray, sophomore. Gabe Jackas, junior. Josh Kurtz at linebacker, junior. Dylan Rosiak, junior. Seth Coleman, Tayra Edwards, and Dennis Briggs are seniors, but Torrey Cox Jr. is a junior. Matthew Bailey is a sophomore. Miles Scott and Xavier Scott are juniors. Caleb Patterson is a sophomore. And other contributing players like Alec Bryant, junior. Pat Farrell, redshirt freshman. Joe Barna in the two deep as a true freshman at linebacker. And then Terrence Brooks, transferred in from Texas, junior. A lot of these starters and a lot of the two deep have eligibility. That's another year to come back under a well-coached staff and compete for bigger and better things than they already are this year. And they're competing for not just a nice bowl bid just outside of the 12-team playoff. Depending on what happens, and this is insane, and it's not likely, they're still in play for a 12-team playoff appearance. And they can compete for bigger and better things next year with all that they could bring back. I think the culture that Bielema has, the way that he's recruited, the way that he's developing, the success that he's had, 24-18 overall record at Illinois, 15-16 in conference. They're 55th in S&P Plus, 45th in S&P Plus, 55th in FPI. I think he has a good foundation. I think that Illinois is going to be, well, a good team moving forward. They're going to be competitive in the Big Ten. Competitive as in, well, winning championships? I don't think so. But as in being a chaos team, earning an upset, maybe reaching the playoff every so often, especially if it gets expanded from 12 to, let's say, 16 or beyond that, almost certainly. They're going to be winning games there in Champaign, Illinois with Brett Bielema. My MVP for the game is quarterback Luke Altmaier. He had 80 passing yards, 48 rushing yards, 2 total touchdowns, and a 68.1 quarterback efficiency rating. Very good player in this game. He had one of his worst games of the season by QBR, but with his legs and with his arm talent, he avoided making turnovers, didn't make many critical errors, and overall led his team to victory. Their 6th win of the season, which is a big milestone for a team like Illinois, whose over-under win total wasn't even above 6. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thanks to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal and Kind of Little OH for being Heisman members. Thanks to Chris Lane, Ismar, Tyler 9, Chilton Kush for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus for being All-Conference members. Have a great day, everyone. Make sure to check out my Patreon page, merchandise store, and Discord server. Yes, via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Have a great day, everyone. Go Blue, and go Fighting Illini.